Yep.
And here we are at Pearl Street. Now, Pearl Street is named after pearls. See, originally, the Lenape people, this is the edge of the island originally. The Lenape people would leave a lot of these shelled and pearled out oysters on the edge of this street, or on the edge of this road, the island, and it would be glistening with pearls, originally called Pearly Street. Now, remember what I mentioned earlier, this island directly south is home to a wonderful harbor, and it wasn't just good for boats, it was home to these bodacious 12-inch, foot-long oysters. Now, the pearls in these babies, not only did they give the name to this street, these pearls would make Audrey Hepburn look like she shops at a thrift shop, and imagine the aphrodisiac effect from such oysters. They could get pandas to mate. You could bring back dead populations of animals. That's how good they were. Now, right behind me, you have Fraunces Tavern. Now, this is a recreation, a early 1900s recreation of an older mansion. It was owned by Mr. Fraunces. He was a renowned cook, and he made wonderful pastries. So good, in fact, that during George Washington's presidency, he was actually chief steward for a little bit. Now, let's go back a bit. This bar, this tavern, was home to a lot of major events, a lot of commotion. One of the famous events here was in 1733. Now, at this time, there's already discontent against the British. There was the tea crisis, where they raised taxes on tea from Britain and forced you to buy that tea from Britain and nowhere else. The colonists were still pretty English at this time. They loved their tea. They were not happy about this. And of course, in Boston, they dumped all the tea into the harbor, making the water delicious. And now something similar happened in New York. It wasn't that bad, but they did find a British captain, trying to sneak some tea in his cargo into New York to sell. This did not fly that well. They took him, they grabbed him, they dumped the tea, of course. Not enough to make the ocean taste good, but enough to make a point. They brought him to this tavern. They made him publicly apologize. Ooh, yeah, you see, that's pretty embarrassing. The king, he was flabbergasted. He dropped his teacup and his crumpet. He just was not happy with this, and he even said, you know, if you don't shape up, if you don't get yourself together, I don't care if I can resort to violence. Now, this is paraphrasing, of course, but you get the idea. Now, this tavern over here was home to a lot of anti-British movements. You had the Liberty Boys, you had other rebellion groups. This also was home to the country's, one of the first official pub crawls. This is where George Washington had his big celebratory dinner, his big party, when the British left this island and had evacuation day, and he decided to say goodbye because he thought he was leaving politics. He had his party over here, and it was a big deal. He shook everyone's hands. He couldn't go around to them, but they came to him. You know, he made this big speech, a tearjerker with lots of probably good sound bites, and eventually he made his big goodbye. He went home. He went to the Jersey Shore where he could get his tan on or something. He was on the boat. He took his hat off to a final salute, and that was the end of his initial term serving for this country as a general. He, of course, came back when the country needed him, but he provided a great example of a humble leader who stepped down after he wasn't needed anymore. This is a story behind Fraunces Tavern. Now, bars are a pretty big deal in New York. Remember I said one of the possible definitions of Manhattan, is a place of general inebriation. Now, guess what? The first city hall was also in a tavern, was also in a pub, right at the corner. It was called Stadhuis, and originally, before the city gained this municipality, it just was a place of general meetings for the Dutch colonists to figure out what was going on, and finally, 1653, when it became a city, when New Amsterdam became New Amsterdam, and Stuyvesant became governor of this place, he had the first official town hall meeting right over there. Now, of course, this building's not up right now, but there is a plaque, which you'll see. And we'll go over there to Stone Street next.